Forest were promoted back into the top flight of English football. Within 3 short years, they were league winners, cup winners, and European champions.
Francis scores!
The extraordinary managerial partnership of Brian Clough and Peter Taylor had built a side to conquer all before them.
You and your profession just might recognise that we are a good side.
These were halcyon days for English football, and Nottingham Forest were leading the charge. After just 44 days in charge of Leeds United, Brian Clough had been sacked. But despite the controversies around Clough, Nottingham Forest felt fortunate to enlist him as their manager in January 1975.
The club itself wasn't in great shape, I must admit. We'd got relegated in 1972, the year that I'd come to the football club as an 18, 19-year-old, and we'd stayed there for a few years.
There is no immediate changes. It's not an overnight job, football.
I would say I have to be surprised but that we could have attracted such a brilliant character, such a charismatic character, and such a great manager.
I've got to get to know them a little bit better, try and get a little bit out of them. I think they've got to, got to produce.
We got him, I think, with a big point to prove. Being sacked at Leeds United, he's obviously holding a grudge, which was good.
We had one thing in common, of course. We both want success. The committee wants success and I want success for Nottingham Forest.
Joining Clough at Forest was midfielder John McGovern, who had played under him at Hartlepool, Derby and Leeds.
He threw a ball at me in the dressing room before the start of one match. We were all wondering who was going to be captain. And I caught it, and he literally said, "Oh, you caught that well. You might as well take the lads out." And a year after he was manager of Nottingham Forest, Peter Taylor rejoined him, and that was really like the blue touch paper and stand well back.
Clough and assistant Peter Taylor were a formidable partnership. They had turned Derby County from second division strugglers into first division champions and guided them to a European Cup semi-final. After a spell apart, they had reunited, and at Nottingham Forest were ready to forge their greatest team yet.
Good cop, bad cop. You go in for a contract and Peter say to you, "What's your vices? Do you like women? Do you drink? Do you gamble?" And then the manager come in the room, he say, "Well, I'd like a vice, boss." He said, "Well, I hear you like gambling." And I go, "Where's he got that from?" So Peter told him what your vice was.
I think two people can do a job better than one for a start, and his expertise in finding players and having a knowledge of football was second to none at that particular time.
There was a lot of untapped talent. You know, you're talking about John Robertson, who was, second to none really. Tony Woodcock, Viv Anderson, Martin O'Neill, Ian Bowyer, all these people were here.
In May 1977, the potential began to be realised. Forest were promoted and were back in top-flight football after 5 years out of it.
I don't think people rated their chances very good at all. You would have been hoping that maybe mid-table or something like that would be an extreme success, really, for a team that just scraped up in third position. But we went up there, and first game was Everton, where I remember for the first 20 minutes, I couldn't get my breath. Then we got a goal, Peter Wood scored. Then we settled down, played terrific football, won 3-1 in the end.
Clough and Taylor soon made additions to the squad, including, significantly, a goalkeeper.
There's no instructions for me as a goalkeeper. We knew we wanted to play football, but by the same token, if I wanted to kick the ball long, I'd see the opportunity. We did have quite a bit of pace up front.
The directions from the management were simple. Do your job and get the ball to John Robertson whenever possible. With players such as Ian Bowyer and David Needham in the squad as well, This was a group that would take the First Division by storm.
We were flying, absolutely flying. But there was lots of doubters around, and I'm deep down probably because it was the whole First Division at that time was essentially new to us, to a lot of the players, that we wondered how long we could maybe keep this going.
As Christmas approached, Forest were top of the league, but next up was a trip to Old Trafford.
That's the greatest performance I've ever played in a team. Just as simple as that. We were awesome that day.
Played in for Peter With, and Woodcock scores! Tony Woodcock for Forest.
We were mesmeric that afternoon. Really, really fantastic.
It's Archie Kemmel now breaking for Forest. 3 up in this attack. John Robertson. Surely he'll score. It's 3-0.
And we scored 4. It was just an incredible performance.
Put it through by Gebel. Tony Woodcock for on goal. It's 4.
There was a great freedom about the team. We were counter-attacking it, not only with great skill, a lot of pace. It was great to be part of it.
It wasn't just in the league that Forest were impressing. By March 1978, they'd earned themselves the right to challenge realistically for trophies. In under a year, Clough's men had gone from the Second Division to League Cup finalists. But the boss would not be letting anyone get carried away. Around this team, complacency was strictly forbidden.
Despite the fact we played reasonably well for 5 or 6, 7 months, at this precise moment, we haven't won anything.
Forest's opponents were the domestic and European champions, Liverpool.
They were the real pedigree, you know, they were the real deal. If you had any ambitions to win anything, you knew you had to get past Liverpool.
And adding to the difficulty of the task ahead, goalkeeper Peter Shilton was cup-tied.
That spirit and belief within the camp, Chris Wood's coming into the side as a young, inexperienced goalkeeper performed miracles for a player so young.
After a 0-0 draw, the teams replayed at Old Trafford, where John Robertson's penalty settled the tie. Forest had their first silverware in 19 years, and a bigger prize would soon follow. The title could be won with 5 games remaining at Coventry City.
It was a day that I'll always remember at Coventry because, you know, we were put under a lot of pressure, but there was a day that I was personally proud of. One moment in particular was a save from a centre forward called Ferguson.
Wallace. In goes Ferguson. Oh, what a save by Peter Shilton. Absolutely fantastic.
I don't quite know how I did it myself, but I managed to change direction and flick it over the bar, and I think the great thing was he actually just sank on his knees. If so, I can't believe what's happened, how he saved that.
I said before we kicked the ball, I thought we'd qualify for Europe, no more. And that would have been an achievement. But having signed Shilton, I said then that anything was possible. He's by far the greatest goalkeeper in the world, and has been for the last 10 years.
At the end of the match, which ended up 0-0 and we'd won the First Division, I turned to Brian Clough and just said, "Well done, boss, we've won it." And he matter-of-factly said to me, "Oh, yeah, that's right."
We got the point at Coventry, we got on the coach and came home. There was no champagne, no nothing. It was a job done.
Even though we won with a few games in hand, it was just an incredible feeling, absolutely incredible to go and to win the championship, considering from the position that we were in a year previous.
Forest could now look forward to visiting foreign climes in the following season's European Cup, or so they thought.
When the draw comes out, we're drawn against Liverpool.
We're looking forward to going to Madrid or Paris, you know, and not Liverpool.
They were obviously big favourites, so it was a bit of a downer, really, I think.
But Brian Clough turned it round. He said, because in their dressing room, they'll be going, "Not them again."
At the City ground, Forest gained a 2-0 first leg lead, thanks to Gary Birtles and Colin Barrett.
It was a great achievement. They were the yardstick. I think Graham Souness or somebody said prior to that game, Forest do a Forest, you know, so rightly so, because we were just the upstarts coming up and trying to get to where they'd achieved it for many, many years.
Well,
You know, I say it begrudgingly because I think we were still the best team, but they were a really difficult outfit to break down. They had a system, they had a great goalkeeper, Larry Lloyd, Kenny Burns at the back, never went near the halfway line, never mind over it. We had a real problem breaking them down.
At Anfield, Forest held on for a 0-0 draw. The European champions were out.
I don't think at that time we realised just how good they were. We knew they were a good side, but if ever you would look at a side and say, right, they're the ones that ultimately play so much to their strengths. We kept on playing against them in that period and hammering them, and they kept on beating us.
We were very resilient and we were starting to know how to defend.
People kept on writing them off. And I tell you what, not only were they a great team, but and a very underrated team. When you talk about a team, this was a real team.
Knocking them out, I think that some of the major people at Liverpool at the time said, you can go on and win this competition.
Forest had become seemingly impossible to beat. From 26 November 1977 until December 9th, 1978, they were undefeated in the league.
People said, do you realise you've gone 42 league games without losing? You know, nobody had ever considered it. You know, there was no publicity thrown at it. And when it actually happened, it was, oh, we've lost. A little bit of a mishap, really, but the consistency was incredible. And that's why I think, you know, we couldn't wait for the next training session, never mind the next match.
Sky Bet brings you the Sky Bet Tracker. Cash out, bet status and match stats, all in one place on your mobile and tablet. See real-time game stats on multiple matches. Plus see the status of each bet on every match. So you can cash out when you like. Enjoy a whole new betting experience all in one place wherever you are with.
In February of 1979, Forest added a star signing and in doing so smashed the British transfer record.
I broke the story of Trevor Francis signing, first £1 million player.
The transfer fee record at the time was 500,000. So to actually go from 500 to million was quite something.
Brian put this line out, didn't he, about the fee, saying that, you know, I didn't want him to get big-headed, so I made it £999,999. But the story goes that with levies and VAT and all this sort of thing, it was well over £1 million anyway.
This was the biggest meeting that I was ever about to experience in my footballing career. And Brian Clough was actually playing across the road. I believe he was playing with Gary Birtle's squash.
He has all the equipment needed to be a highly successful player. That's why we've invested £1 million of Nottingham Forest money.
Just a month later, Nottingham Forest were back in London for a second consecutive League Cup final against Southampton.
I don't think Clough and Taylor wanted to make such a big fuss of going out to Wembley again. So what awaited us at that particular evening was a bit of a surprise.
Next thing you know, door opens, there's a crate of champagne, crate of orange juice, and then the manager's saying, well, everybody's got to tell a joke before they go to bed.
Archie Gamble, I think, said, listen, Bosby, I think we've got a big game tomorrow. I think the manager took it as almost to be in sly fashion, and Taylor told him to sit down and be quiet because he was spoiling the party.
Finally get to bed at midnight, obviously playing again the next day, woke up with headache. But I think it was his way of relaxing the situation.
The game, we played Southampton. We were trailing by a goal to nil at half-time. Bit of a rollicking in the Wembley dressing room. I think it was Clough more embarrassed by what had happened the evening before and realising that this might have an effect on our game. But anyway, the team talk seemed to work. Eventually, we won the game 3-2.
2 goals for Gary Birtles and 1 for Tony Woodcock made sure Forest successfully defended their League Cup title.
And we had many a decent evening after that, in good company with Clough and Taylor, but I think that they never went as far again.
In the European Cup, the team had reached the semi-finals, but German champions Cologne drew 3-3 at the City Ground. Brian Clough had a message to deliver before the return leg.
He just looked right at the camera and he said,
I hope anybody's not stupid enough to write us off.
And of course, it would have been stupid to write us off. We said to people, well, you know, it's 3-3. All we need's a goal.
And when Ian Bowyer heads one into the net for us, about 20 minutes to go, I mean, it gave us such an amazing lift.
All flicked on, it's Bowyer! He's got it! Bowyer for Forest!
After we played in Nottingham, not many people thought we were going to do it, but I did.
You really thought so?
Well, I said so after the match, that anybody who thought we were out of this competition was stupid.
The final would be played in Munich. Clough and Taylor were faced with some tough selection decisions, particularly over whether Trevor Francis would play. Francis was eligible in Europe for the first time since his transfer, and Martin O'Neill, although desperate to play, was struggling to be fit.
I remember it as if it was yesterday. Shilton, Anderson, Burns, Lloyd, Clark, Francis, McGovern, Bowyer, Robertson, Woodcock, Birtles.
Harrowing disappointment to be left out of the final at that particular time, because you think, well, you're never going